So before we start, I would like to proceed by giving general reminders to the debaters here. So please remember to state your preferred POI method, whether you would like to receive your POI verbally by voice or if you prefer your POI to be done in chat. Debaters must be aware of the preferred POI method when asking for POI. Please be mindful of the word you use in the debate, and please be respectful to each other to avoid equity consent. If the speakers are able to conduct themselves professionally to ensure that the debate progresses smoothly. Lastly, please be aware of the time of the speech. The timekeeper will keep the time for you, but it's also important for you to also time yourself in case of any technical difficulties. So before we begin the debate, I would like to reemphasize the motion, which is this House believes that social media companies with a market share above 50% should be broken up to prevent monopolies. So if everyone ready, I would like to invite the Prime Minister to deliver the speech. Here. So for the Prime Minister, if you're ready, just let me know. I'll start the timer. Let me share the screen first.
All right. Hi.
Happy video.
Let me know when you're ready. Just on your countdown, 3, 2, 1. Then I'll start the timer.
Okay. Pronunciate him. I'll accept your eyes in the chat, so don't worry. Right. Sorry, my speech. 3, 2, 1. Freedom of speech is the cornerstone of democracy, but it's only effective insofar as we have control over it. The criticism of social media so far is that if I'm Canadian and I post some right-wing content, my post will be taken down because that country is generally averse to right-wing populism. If I'm in the US and I'm critical of the state, there will be a community notes post there saying that whatever I'm saying is untrue. This is soft censorship, and at worst, in the past, there has been outright taking down of accounts and tweets. We argue that democracy is only effective when there is freedom. It is time to take our freedom back. Couple of things I'll say. The Gov case is very simple. 2 things. The first is we're just going to prove how principally this is important to break up these monopolies, because lending out, outsourcing our freedom of speech to private companies results in a backsliding of democratic values. But secondly, I'll argue pragmatically how monopolies are predatory in nature. Before that, some things of setup. Obviously, social media companies are companies that have networking platforms. 51% or more than 50% means that they have a monopoly. What does this look like? It looks like Meta having a monopoly in social media platforms. So we prefer Meta to be divided into Instagram and Facebook. It also looks like Alphabet having a monopoly in content consumption, content generation. So we prefer Google and YouTube to be divided. Thirdly, looks like ByteDance having a monopoly in short form content. We're going to divide that as well. We prefer the X model, where there is only one company owning one subsidiary company. Opt defends, and I want to make it very clear, Opt has to defend a monopoly. They cannot break it apart. They have to have one institution controlling all of our freedom of speech. That's the burden that they have to defend. The counterfactual is very simple. We prefer competition in social media companies, which means that they have different managements, different company constitutions, different personnel, which means that they have to compete against each other because their banks are inherently different. First argument then, on how outsourcing freedom of speech to private companies results in a backsliding of democratic values. Let's analyze the point of media. The media is the fourth estate that attempts to push people to criticize the state. This is important for 3 things. Number 1, it holds the state accountable. This looks like polling and opinions online that attempt to criticize the state. Secondly, media is important because it empowers journalism to report and inform the public. This looks like bombshell discoveries and independent journalists attempting to take down the authorities within the state. But thirdly, social media is important because it allows people to participate in democracies in terms of comments, upvotes, and likes. Media is only good insofar as it is free. What I'm proving here in the argument is how monopoly hinders that freedom. Couple of reasons. The first is that, what's happening, Ryan?
I think it's because of Wi-Fi issues. So sorry about this. But if you could turn off their camera, that would be great, because my internet.
Okay.
Where did you?
I tracked you until your first argument.
Okay.
Which is about
About what? Okay. Boleh.
It's around 240.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Oh wait. 240, yeah. Okay, so good. Okay, I'll restart in 3, 2, 1. So, on first argument on outsourcing freedom of speech, resulting in backsliding of democratic values. Okay, the point of media is as the fourth estate that pushes people to criticize the state. This looks like, number one, holding the state accountable through polling and opinions where people attempt to criticize the state in their tweets and Facebook posts. Secondly, it empowers journalism to report and inform the public through bombshell discoveries and independent journalism. Thirdly, it allows people to participate in democracies in terms of comments and upvotes. The point here is that media is only effective insofar as it's free. Monopolies hinder freedom. This looks like giving a lot of power to companies who are inherently profit motivated. This can happen in politics, where developing countries have seen to make deals with Facebook to censor their own content. And that's not even the worst thing. 2016 election, Cambridge Analytica has literally sold their data to the Donald Trump campaign, swinging the election in his favor. But secondly, even these companies have political motivations themselves because they vie for more content and more expansion. This looks like how Twitter, under Dorsey in the past, censored right-wing content to take down these averse opinions just because they feel as if their identity is left-wing. But thirdly, monopolies result in these companies selling data to the highest bidder. This looks like how they sell personal data of consumers to insurance companies that literally take that are inherently perverse because then they have a competitive advantage in selling their products to these consumers who don't know any better. The way here is that there is no other way to hold them accountable in status quo. Because number one, they have so much market share. So we can't even buy the shares and change it in the board of directors because not everyone has the amount of money that Elon Musk has. But secondly, we can't boycott them because it's a necessity. Everyone uses Twitter, everyone uses Facebook. And even if you don't use Facebook, you use Instagram and other products. What's happening in status quo is that we're in a very precarious position. What we're proving is that we need to have more control, as it were, in status quo, as opposed, which is what opposition has to defend. How does breaking up these companies aid to that benefit? The first benefit here is that each company will have less power. That means their profit motivation isn't to expand, but to win back the current market that they have lost as a result of this breaking up. They are forced to compete with each other. So they're competing in improving the services itself, and this is inherently important because when one individual company fails, the other company will then combat and win back the market share. So there will always be a healthy competition. But secondly, we just democratize information now. Journalists get the power to choose which platform is comparatively better, whether they want to post this bombshell discovery on Instagram or Facebook. There is a discernible difference in people consuming that content. This balances the power back to the community, which is otherwise gone in opposition's world. Before moving on, I'll take a rewind if there's any. All right, second argument, how monopolies are predatory in nature. And this is a very basic argument on how monopolies work. Number one, the harm is monopolies result in workers being at the behest of their employees. ByteDance just recently in Malaysia laid off a number of engineers and technicians just because they have the capacity to do that. And this is incredibly important because workers in these developing countries have no other alternative if there is only one person that can employ you. Secondly, there are price hikes. This is a growing trend in social media companies. When there's YouTube Premium, there's exclusive subscriber blocks, there's a verification tick that only a handful of people can afford. This means that there's a premium on information that otherwise wouldn't have happened if there's competition. But thirdly, if you get the content for free, then you are the content. Then you have to sell, you have to buy the product with your own data. That's when you give more power to these companies. It's a cycle of violence that is attacked on you as a consumer. Competition solves this problem in very different ways because you have to charge less because that's how you win back the company. Revenue is no longer just expanding the company, but rather retaining the current consumer base that you have. But secondly, engineers, technicians will have more control because there are just more jobs at your disposal. There's more people that can hire you. And comparative, in status quo, there's only one person that can hire you. For all those reasons, it's time to take back our freedom.
All right, so thank you, Prime Minister, for that speech. Now I would like to invite the leader of opposition to deliver the speech. So just let me know when you're ready and you can, on a count 3 lah.
All right. So before I start, My pronouns are he, him, and my POIs can be given verbally. So just turn on your mics and just interrupt me mid-speech. And if I want to take it, I'll take it. If I don't want to, I don't take it lah. You give me a moment, I'm gonna set up my time. Right. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Now, before I move on to my arguments or my case setup, I would like to give out a few rebuttals towards like government, and maybe my case setup also be inside my rebuttals. Now, let's look at the first thing I want to rebut towards like government is that they stated how by breaking down the company, you are able to create more freedom and we're able to create more competition. But here's a problem that exists under side government, especially with the case setup. Their case setup is basically when they say they want to break it down, they just break it down to like different if like Meta, they just want to break down Meta into Instagram as Facebook. Here's the thing, it does not really create much competition because in the end of the day, we're still the same company working together. And also, it doesn't really create any of freedom because in the end of the day, you still aren't able to control those companies. If you say about how those companies are very much against like maybe some right-wing ideology, in the end of the day, even if you were to break up like that, in the end of the day, that company is still under the same administration and within the same country. And you aren't able to control the social media because it's a private company. Therefore, they are still going to be like considered some level of biasness meaning that any benefit you're given is just mutually exclusive under both sides. Therefore, like creating a more independent journalist or that stuff even exists under our world also. And also believe that competition is very good, especially for social media, which I further explained in my argument. And also another thing you say is that how having a monopoly is very much a predatory action because then it causes problem for unemployment. Understand that the problem of unemployment maybe exists even more under your world because understand that people aren't able to transition from one social media to another by creating more different type of social media. Doesn't necessarily mean that that social media will exist and also prevail against all this monopoly or the giant social media which already exists in the current market. Which brings me to the case that also the definition that will be given on the side opposition on what is social media. Now, social media is somewhat like Twitter, FB, and other social media. Now, this is different from any like natural or like normal products, for example, like medicine, because I understand that this is a form of entertainment. It has no definitive value. Therefore, like having a monopoly is way better because it's easier for us to create more regulation policy for the safety of our consumer. And really to understand that it's very inconvenient for you to break down social medias because then if you were to break down social medias and cause an effect of the booming of other different social medias or new upcoming social medias will cause a lot of inconvenience towards the consumer. And even if there are new social medias, people will have a hard time transitioning towards other social medias because then those giants, the big social media companies, are already like something that they would like to hold on, and it's more inconvenient for them to stay there and do not want any changes. And therefore, monopoly is still better. And yeah, so what we want to prove in today's debate and the side opposition is that we want to prove to you that it's better for us to not break up the companies, even if they have a 50% market share, because we believe that it's more beneficial for the consumer, it's more beneficial and efficient for both the company and also consumers. Before I move on to my argument, I think there's a POI. Yeah, I'll take that.
So, yeah, when companies become monopoly, that means they have higher forms of political capital and money. Don't you think they can lobby with the governments to have favorable policies for them?
Well, yes, that would exist under our world. It might exist, but here's the thing: those things would also exist under your world too. Because understand that data is something that's very much sought after by any government, and under your world, by making the company even smaller and making it even easier for government or even the people to get more out of the companies to have more specific data of you for a even cheaper price. By having a bigger company, means that it's going to be very expensive for you to even get that data in the first place, making that data very scarce. But if you were to break down all this company, you're making it those data more readily available and more cheaper than it used to be. Therefore, more of your data can be breached under side opposition if you were to break down all these social media company into smaller pieces. Now, let's move on to my argument under the tagline of how monopolization is better. Moving on to the first level of analysis is that what do we mean by this? Now, let's look at the difference between social media share market and also like normal product, for example, like medicine. Now, social media, there's a comparative. Like, social media is an entertainment, while products like medicine is, something like a need. Therefore, it's very important. And social media is something that's free, and you don't really have to pay for anything because you can just download Instagram for free and you just use it. There's no price gouging. Therefore, monopolization does not really impact financially. And comparison with medicine, if there are monopolization, if you to gouge the prices of medication and it's a monopoly, you are able to find it anywhere else. There's no alternative. Therefore, there is a problem if you have monopoly for normal products. But for social media, those monopolies are instead more beneficial towards the consumers. Because why? By having a centralized and also like one big company that monopolizes all your data, meaning there's even more a bigger safety under our world. Because then those companies are able to share their knowledge of creating security systems that are efficient in maintaining also keeping the security of the data of our users even better. Because if there's more different type of social medias, meaning that there's different type of regulation and also problems. Let's move on to the second level of analysis. What the benefit you are able to achieve under our world. So what happened? We're able to regulate our content in a larger scale with a big monopolization of one big company controlling the social media. Meaning that we are able to regulate the amount of content that are being posted on social media and what content are being reached out towards our audience. Now, this is very important because to understand the current status quo, there's a big problem of misinformation being spread around. By having one bigger social media with one centralized system to regulate all the contents that are being posted, meaning it's easier for us to combat problems like misinformation. If you have multiple different social medias with multiple different administration and system to regulate those posts, it's going to be even harder for us to try and regulate and control the problem of disinformation, also like maybe harassment towards other people, problems like racism. Those things are very hard to regulate if you don't have a centralized security system. Therefore, I believe that under our world, on the side of the opposition, we are able to cater to the safety and also needs of the social media consumers and also the company in the end of the day. In comparison to side government, where they try to break it down, making our data more vulnerable than ever, making it even more inconvenient for the users and also for the company. With that, I don't really have much else to say. I think that's all from me. Thank you so much. Toodles.
So thank you, Leader of Opposition, for that speech. Now I would like to invite the Deputy Prime Minister to deliver the speech. So just let me know on the count of three when you are ready.
I'm letting on my last thing.
Can you speak again? I think I didn't catch your voice.
Yeah, no, nothing.
Right.
I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Let's just first understand what does breaking up companies to prevent monopolies mean. It does not mean that only having one company for each social media. It can mean more than that. It is companies having different constitutions and different C-suites. There's different bosses for each company. And even if you wanted to argue on the how are we going to do it, the feasibility of it, one, I think we have graph yet of how it is going to be then. And secondly, even if you have to push to us that TikTok would have to be broken up, and this means that TikTok only have exclusive powers to only produce videos below 3-minute content, because above of that will be YouTube, we're going to simply concede on that if that is what your attack is, because that is not damaging at all. But what is the things that they admitted that is actually damaging to their case? Side opposition admitted that social media can pick which side of politics that they wanted to support. This means that users would have to look at right-wing content because Elon supports Trump. These are things that Shakif also explained. Things like community notes are more likely going to be only be right-leaning, like telling people what are the things that the right people do and the left doesn't do. These are the things that Elon controls and what the social media controls. This is what happens back in during Trump's election back then in Cambridge Analytica issue on how you have lesser freedom of speech. In order for them to win the debate, they have to debate on the principle that Shakif argued in first. This means that they have to explain to us on how the users right now would have more freedom of speech. And I think I'm going to extend that later in my argument on how they are actually going to condemn you more and going to crack down more on the freedom of speech. At the point in which you have lesser of it, they cannot win the debate. What are the trade-offs that we're willing to make? Sure, social medias might not be free under our world, since small companies need more money to sustain and they can only charge ads for less because they don't have as many users. This means that they cannot charge a premium for these ads. But Shakif already explained the mechanism of how there's competition between companies means that they would charge less in order for them to they would have to charge less in order for them to have people going to continue using the content. Yeah. Let's just move on to the first issue, which is on privacy issues. How data is going to only be sold more since there's greater concentration of data in only one company. One company can do everything and they can justify getting all these data since they control multiple social media platforms about you. As an example, they do not only control your Instagram usage, they also know what you do in your WhatsApp. They also know what you do in your Google. This means that since they have more data towards you, Meta knows everything about you. They can just sell your data, which is more likely to happen, and users have no other option. The point of this argument is to prove that how social media have a control over your data, and you have no other options because you cannot go onto other options since these companies are too big and everyone uses the same platform. Under our comparative, people can just simply abandon the social media companies if they feel like they're doing something bad about you. They're stealing your data and you don't respect your privacy. All this is not available under your side of the house since everyone uses Instagram. If I'm not on Instagram, I'm missing on what my friends are doing. Therefore, the second analysis to this is that companies can take your data and sell it to the government. Because even though it is your privacy and everyone is privy to their own privacy, this is where crackdowns of the government can happen more. This means that in bad democracies, which is the worst case scenario, you can crack down on people more. People do not have freedom of speech for them to speak and post contents against the government, since everything that you post, the government would know about you and would track down where your house is and do everything because you are not privy to your own data because government can just buy this data and maybe do all these dealings with these particular companies. And these companies would have all the data towards you because of all I explained in my first argument about how all these companies have a crackdown, have a control about all of your data across multiple platforms. Therefore, the only type of content that is going to be published in these particular social medias are only going to be pro-governments. In case if you post something that is harmful, you're going to be caught and you spend the night in the prison. Therefore, this leads to the problem of accountability. When they are smaller companies, that means it's easier for us to hold them accountable. Since, firstly, there's less bureaucracy. Since there's specific departments for you to deduce blame, but which departments had abused, which departments sold their data or do whatsoever. The problem with bigger companies is that they have countless steps in order for you to just get to the C-suite. That means that it is harder for you to make those changes or make features that would matter more. This means that user experience and also the things that matter to you would also suffer. Secondly, about how there's greater scrutiny under our world. The thing about small companies is they don't have as many resources and they don't have as much power of lobbying to the politicians as bigger firms. And big companies, they have the PR in order to shield them from anything that is being said towards them. Smaller companies that do not have this. Therefore, they're more vulnerable to scrutiny. Therefore, they will do anything in order to they will do anything in order to retain those users in your company, in your social media platform. And the big companies, they will just simply prevent all these smaller companies from growing. Therefore, you have lesser companies growing all around you. The specific problem of monopolies would also happen in your house. Under our world, we include better accountability for SOP and transparency policies. This means that now bigger companies, which have more lawyers and can hire more lawyers to prevent any lawsuits, means that you can never do anything in order for you to silence them. Users can never do anything against them, since they will only be silenced or they will only be beaten up in court. The third layer of analysis is about how there's direct feedback loop. It's more easier for you to have better users since they don't opt out from your services, since you want them to remain in your social media platform. Therefore, they would update the features or listen out about what other users are saying. How do we ensure better services? Under our world, there's more tailored version of social media instead of everything being a copy paste of one another. And the WhatsApp status, you can like your WhatsApp status similar to Instagram stories because they're owned by a similar company. There's no difference between the social media companies, but people cannot do anything about it because they still depend their lives on the social media. User experience often suffers since companies are more complacent, since people would never leave their platform anyway. But before I move on to my comparative RNPOIs, 3, 2, 1. Two comparative then. Firstly on the users and secondly on the apps. Firstly, on the comparative for users. Users now would have more options of which app to use, and there's a lot more opportunities for apps to be developed. Since not everything is consolidated by one mega good company that's going to bury other small companies. Because under your world, if there is a new company that is pretty good, they will just simply buy your entire company and maybe use it as a feature inside their own app. This means that users do not have any choices because if they want to use these specific apps, it is only a feature within WhatsApp. Now, users don't have as much choices, and these choices lead to better services proved in first argument just now. There will be apps that cater to specific nuances. If you like anime, or maybe there's community in order for them, these apps would cater to you. Maybe there will be no super apps, but what's the use of super apps anyway? Secondly, in apps, there will be changes in apps behavior since developers will now focus more on retaining users instead of having more revenue, which means they would focus more on creating features that would retain users instead of taking money away from the users. Because under your side of the house, they would just simply want to take money because you already have a huge chunk of base of people using their apps anyway. So even if there is ad placements, there would be not still one that is annoying as Twitter because they know that people will not leave Twitter anyway. At this point in time, we prove to you on how, firstly, we win how there's better user experience and how users can actually have a freedom of choice, and there's a lot more freedom of speech for you to say, and secondly, how there's better developers as a whole.
All right. Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, for that speech. Now, I would like to invite Deputy Leader of Opposition to deliver the speech. So, as always, just let me know when you're ready, and I'll start the timer on the count of 3.
All right, give me a moment. Let me organize my notes first. Can you, first of all, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah.
Oh. All right, give me a moment. Let me organize my notes and I'll tell you when I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right. So to start off, I'm not starting my debate yet. To start off, my name is Haziq. I am the Deputy Leader of Opposition. My pronouns are he, him. Any POIs will be taken verbally via opening your microphone and interjecting my speech. And with that, I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. So I'll be beginning my speech by giving a few rebuttals to what the Deputy Prime Minister said in his early speech. He made a big point about political monopoly, about how certain companies have certain political inclinations, and that will negatively affect consumers using these big social media apps that everyone rely on. We on the government side Oh, sorry about that. I'll repeat what I just said. We on the government side don't view political monopoly as that big of a problem in the big picture, because if our major social media, a majority of social media users don't even care about politics. They don't go on social media to affirm who they're voting for. Most of them are there to look at funny cat videos, to look at people falling from buildings. Sorry. They're there for entertainment mostly. So this is not an issue in the big picture for majority of consumers using these big monopolized social media apps. And also the government doesn't realize that our world, the opposition world, is the status quo. We are living in the opposition's world right now, where big companies are allowed to exceed the 50% market share without being broken down. And yet, if we look at our world right now, there is still competition. You have YouTube Shorts. In the context of short form content, yes, TikTok is big, but you have other choices like YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, Facebook Shorts, if I recall that's what they named it. And yes, even under our world, which is the status quo right now, consumers have a choice. It's not like one big monopoly under one big corporation that everyone. It's not like all these apps lead to one big corporation. There is still competing apps from different companies. And under the government's world, if we are arguing security and laws and stuff like that, don't you think that with all of these broken down companies, there's tons of them, could be tens or hundreds, under the government's world, wouldn't the government have a way harder time to track down the content on all of these individual apps? Because all of these individual apps will have their own communities, and malicious things can brew in each of these communities without the government knowing, because they're too occupied with some other app to realize that something is happening inside another app. So this results in poor security for under the government's world, because they don't have enough workforce. So in this point of view, it is better to centralize, as in let this company monopolize, so that everything is on one app, and it makes it easier for government to monitor any misdoings, any malicious things, any breaking of the law. So that wraps it for my rebuttal. I'll be moving on to my arguments under the tagline of user convenience. So what am I trying to prove here? The burden of proof for me right now is that monopolies in social media apps make for higher qualities apps. So my first point supporting this BOP is that it's easier network. What I mean by easier network is users. So the value of a social media app lies in the social aspect, as in it's in its name. What its value is that the more people use, the more users of social media app, the higher its values goes, because you have more users on that app. Sorry, I fumbled my words here. The more users are on a certain social media app, the higher its values goes, because that's the point of social media apps, to attract users more, to attract as many users as it can to use its platform. So I'm talking about a general layman, the average Joe consumer, you and me. When we use a social media app, our first thought is not about data security or what they're doing with our data and stuff like that. Well, we have to admit that we like convenience first. That is in our core. People like it when they can find everything in one place. It's easier when you have all your friends, your favorite celebrities, your artists, all in one app for you to look at, instead of having to look for each of them in different apps. And the government's world, breaking down these companies when they exceed 50% share, you will have imminent breakdowns. I say this because it is inevitable that everyone will look for convenience. And this urge to look for convenience will lead to people congregating under one app, despite the policy of companies breaking down when they exceed 50% market share. This means that this will set a time bomb for each big social media apps under the government's world to break down once everyone starts using it. So this is very frustrating for consumers, as I said, because there will be communities who shatter. Their favorite celebrities, artists, friends, and family, they all will be scattered to different apps, which makes it harder for them to network in the first place. This impacts both these in the context of fans and celebrities. This impacts both the fans and celebrities. First, they will have constantly diminishing audience from having to switch apps all the times. I think I saw a POI in chat. I did say that I prefer verbal POIs, but never mind. POI rejected. So this makes social media more daunting. People are afraid to congregate in one app in fear of it breaking up, because under opposition's world, monopolies be damned, most consumers don't care about data security and stuff, they just want convenience. Even in government's best case, people might organize each time app breaks up, but there will be people left out. So there will still be diminishing communities. And I seem to be running out of time, but I'll be bringing my second point here, which is user experience consistencies. So more apps, by breaking down these big apps more into smaller apps, more of these apps will lead to headache for users, because they have to figure out the settings and how to maneuver these different apps, because different companies will use different loops and user interfaces, because they need to do so, because they need to be different to stay competitive and different for each other. And otherwise, they will be just carbon copies of each other. This diminishes the qualities of these broken down apps, which is frustrating for tons of people, because as I said before, breakdowns are imminent because consumers look for convenience first. So in the worst case scenario, these big social media companies make less than ideal design decisions. But even so, as I said before, consumers hold their power. Even in our status quo right now, they can vote with their phones. That's all for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, the Deputy Leader of Opposition, for that speech. Now I would like to invite the Government Whip to deliver the speech. So as always, just let me know when you're ready. On the count of three.
One of the biggest fumbles that Facebook has made in the past was that they failed to respond to the small conflict that was going on in India, between India and Kashmir, where people televised and live stream individuals in Kashmir being killed on camera. The reason why they took so long to solve this problem was because, number one, big companies like Facebook have no incentive to fix their moderation, because they know that everyone is there anyways. So even if they fail, they know that the other alternatives are not as good and people will remain to use their content. But also, number two, it's precisely because of the fact that the market share that they have also is reflective of how individuals at large just use their content, and therefore they know that individuals will remain to use the same spaces as well. This is the biggest problem in the opposition has yet to justify, which is that when you have a company with a monopoly of a company that is terrorizing the media space, it means that it leaves consumers with little to no options. I know Facebook isn't as important in Malaysia, but in countries like in India and in America, that's where people gain. That's where people get the. That is the app prioritized by people there to get information about things such as politics and things that are pertinent to their own life. The fumble that was made in opposition was that they considered that big companies are not at the behest of the government because they have enough capital to lobby with the government as to get policies that are good in their favor. I have two issues I want to talk about in this debate today, panel, to make it easy for you to decide who wins this round. The first issue is how to have people participate in the democracy of speech freely. And the second issue is how do we make media companies better for consumer experience. The first issue then on how to have people participate in the democracy of speech freely. Opposition gave this brilliant case of saying that because they have monopolies, it is more convenient to regulate content if it's a big company. And this was a response towards the first two cases that we brought up. I think the main problem here, panel, is that this is unengaging to the case in the first two, that media companies dictate how they use the regulations at the end of the day. This looks like censoring right-wing content that the company believes to be against their own regulations, right? This looks like the banning of individuals like Jim Jones, for example, who have been propagating right-wing content that is not aligned with what Mark Zuckerberg feels like is good for society. Although it's true that right-wing content might not be one that is progressive, but at the end of the day, the reason why we have democracy is to allow individuals to freely express their opinions, and particularly important in media companies is to allow them to have a platform of discussion where people disseminate information to each other and come to a conclusion when it comes to deciding how they should run their own lives or deciding who to vote in the next election, right? But secondly, this also looks like the sale of data to other companies without the consumers even knowing. Precisely the reason why that they are the biggest company, it means that oversight as to how they use the data is a problem. That's the reason why they had the whole Congress hearing with the owner of TikTok, precisely because of the fact that they were wary of China stealing data from American users and using that to China's own advantage, be it to security or to to financial advantage, right? At the end of the day, opposition has yet to mechanize how these regulations can actually work. For as long as we've already proven how these regulations do not work and how it backfires and backslides democracy instead, we win on this issue. Secondly, I want to talk about is why are these issues of allowing individuals to participate in democracy of speech freely very important to this debate? Number one, information about anything is predominantly shared in social media. This was something that we brought up in second speech just now, right? Because it becomes part and parcel of our daily lives. It's more than just what the second speaker of opposition said. It's more than just individuals looking at cat videos on TikTok. It's also about how they understand what are the repercussions of the policies that our government is about to implement and how it affects our future generations. The impacts here, panel, is that at the point where you allow these monopolies to control how media or how speech is dictated, this is where you have the events of echo chambers actually being predominant in society, where people are radicalized because of the fact that they are just pushed to the outskirts of society. That's the reason why we oppose the idea of Trump being banned on Twitter before this and setting up his own company called Truth, when now all ultra-conservative right-wing individuals are there. We want them to participate in our platform so that we can freely discuss this information. We don't want to push them away for the idea of making sure that progressivism can actually work. The comparative here is that decentralizing platforms of information was important for the promotion of freedom of speech. Before I move on to my second issue, are there any POIs? 3, 2,
I
1. Yes, sure.
Yeah, so you said about how Trump created a new social media called Truth, where it's only people are mega supporter. Isn't that contradictory how it creates a bigger echo chamber under your work when you break down the company?
No, I'm saying as an effect of you censoring, they go to other places and make websites where they become crazy on their own. We don't want that. Yeah, sure, it's more companies, but the point here is that we want to make companies that are accessible to everyone, not just one platform for one group of individuals only. I think you misunderstood what I said. Second issue then on how do we make media companies better for consumer experience. Opposition didn't really have an explanation to this, apart from saying that, oh, it's convenient because everyone is there already. First of all, this concedes to the problem that I said earlier on, which is that individuals have no option but to subscribe to the terrible services of a particular company. But number two, this is unengaging with the case in the first two speeches, right? Because the basics of economics is that less companies equates to less innovation. That's the reason why Facebook was able to be complacent with moderation, because they know that people will still stay on their website. This comes at the cost of two things. Number one, premium features that are very expensive. It means that individuals, to allow them to have better user experience by maybe using apps that does not have any ads, they have to pay very premium prices. Or secondly, precisely because of the fact that you have singular products, you don't have a choice. You have to stick to the same platform that is too right-wing for you and is bad. The comparative here is simple, that because this is the private sector, business thrives on pushing companies to prioritize consumer experience because now it's a competition for every other company. The weighing here is simple. Companies now have incentive to basically prioritize consumer experience. For example, now their selling point from company A to company B is that, oh, I have better content moderation. Under my platform, you won't see any terrorists killing off babies. Or company B's selling point is that, oh, we don't sell data. That's the benefit of our site because we have more privacy protection. At the end of the day, giving these options was way more important than just convenience. Thank you.
So thank you to the Government Whip for that speech. Now, I want to further the session by inviting the Opposition Whip to deliver the speech. So as always, just let me know when you're ready on count of 3.
Hello? Hello?
Excuse me, our the opposition whip is having a bit of an issue with her microphone. Can we
Yeah,
actually
can
is it okay if she uses my my laptop to give her a speech?
Yeah, sure. Can.
All right, so we all right.
Move. Holy shit.
Sangat tak skibidi.
Sangat tak skibidi. Oh, wait. Wait, how do you mute this? Yeah. I tak pakai lagi earphone. Okay. Can you? I'm so sorry for the inconveniences that happened on our side. Okay, so before I start my speech, my name is Auni. I'm the opposition whip. Oops. And my pronouns is she, her. I will only take POIs verbally because I will not be seeing the chat. So with that, I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, the problem that is here in today's case is that humans have free will, and this free will should be implemented in today's society, in today's motion, where they have the ability to make their choices no matter what social media that is. So let's go to the clashes. Let's go to the rebuttal that will be happening from my side towards the government. So they say that there are like Facebook is terrorizing consumers, for example, doing the killing and stuff, and it makes people have no options to rebut them or sue them because of this. But this is the problem now. Even if on our side, what we have seen is like, number one, what do you mean there's no option? Because we have an option here where, number one, you can all voice out to the government and check on the issue. It will take some time, yes. However, it will still have the check on balance towards the situation and able to sustain and also prevent this kind of issue happening again. That's why nowadays there's no more of these kind of issues coming up. And also, even if it imagine if it happens again in a different world, which is your world currently, which is going to break down this internet, isn't it going to be more worse? Because these people will not be able to, these governments will have to like now find these stuff and then try to diminish them. It will take a longer time because there's more things to be checked off because of this. So the next thing that they are saying about like TikTok China stealing data of Americans, and that's why they have like conference and so on. These and another thing that there's like, it will create people to make their own websites in order to follow their own wing and so on. Isn't that basically what's the harm of your world currently, which is breaking down the entire thing? Because let's say like we are trying to voice out, like in Twitter, like currently in status quo, we have Twitter and explaining the entirety of like the problem that society, what you call it? Society fact check basically. For example, like, KSI is doing crime and they were saying like, this is bad and so this is good and so on. But people will still be able to mention down there if a lot of people accepted that, hey, it's actually bad because there's a lot of sodium and stuff. That's what we have currently with the bigger companies. And isn't that much more better because we are able to regulate it in a much more easier way and not have the hassle of having different apps, the people have to be inconvenient and so on. This is the issue that they didn't even provide the explanation on our side of the world. So with that, I will be going to my clashes today. So I will have 2 clashes for today. So number 1 is the monopolization of social media. Is it harm or more harmful between both worlds? So on their side, they say that the monopolization will be much more harsher because social media itself is predatory, because social media itself will make sure that people will only believe in one wing and so on. But then these echo chambers will still happen if you have more and more social medias. So basically, isn't that like, for example, you have Twitter and also Blue Sky. So now Blue Sky is only for YouTubers and then all of them are going to diminish from Twitter. Isn't that much more problematic? Because people can't also hear the other side of the story, because they will be like, they're going to push themselves to a different places. They're going to push themselves to a different society. Now, what's the situation? Where are your journalism? What are you going to try to give to the society? That's the problem now. So on our side, we believe that even if there's a monopolization, we see that the trade-off is better in terms of safety and convenience. So in basically what we're saying, we are able to save these smaller communities, these minor communities. They are trying to speak out and we are able to talk about it. Even if you're saying government is going to be like buddy-buddying with the social media and take down like some big ass problems, right? Even if that's going to happen, on your side, it's going to make it cheaper for the government, and therefore it will be much more worse. And therefore, with this situation on hand, we're able to say on our side, the trade-off of monopolization is much more better than their side. On the second clash that we have is consumer. Are we victim of the monopolization? So let's talk about bigger companies. Currently we have like YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. These companies are very convenient for us because we are able to network and able to conveniently talk to them. If we immediately disperse this kind of situation, the connections with others are harder. We are unlikely to able to network, and the consumers feel it's much more problematic in order to go. And then now with these different companies, they are all asking for profit also, because they are not going to be profiting when they don't have 50% market share, and therefore it will be much more problematic on their side, because these people won't be able to. They have to pay more in order for different types, like more and more subscription they have to do, like with the breakdown so on. Because like now, if you're saying like, YouTube has to pay like to remove ads and get like certain exclusiveness, it's up to them. It's their free will. But then do you have to like force them to pay more and more just because there's more companies? That's the problem. That it's going to be problematic for the consumers itself. So what on their side have is less regulation, less balance, and less synchronization. Basically, we are unable to identify the similarities between these companies because there's no regulation that's going on. There's no things that we are able to continue on. But then with this trade of monopolization, we are able to happen, and therefore in situations like this, I think it's much more better on our side to have these problem solved. So, but then so on our so what's the comparison between both worlds, right? So comparison is like both sides will still have monopolization, but it's just different aspect. It's much more cheaper. But on our side, it's like whatever the government said is literally not mutually exclusive because it will still happen on our side, but it will happen much more harsher in their side. Even if this even if you take on their best word, where we are able to reduce the monopolization by we are able to reduce all people being left wing and so on. It will still happen because, as they say, Trump literally made a new website and make their right wing become stronger. Isn't that more problematic? So I think in their side, it's not beneficial or not efficient for a company to be broken down, since monopolization can lead to more harm than good in their side. But on our side, we are able to treat off this monopolization for the ensure of safety and convenience for the consumer. Not only that, we are able to also explain that these whatever that the government has been bringing up the entire time within their side is not even impactful onto this debate. And therefore, I rest my case. Thank you so much.
All right. So thank you for the opposition whip for that speech. We'll now move on to the next section, which is will be the reply speech portion of the debate. To begin the reply speech, I would like to invite the opposition reply to deliver the speech. Here. So a moment, let me set up the first. Just get ready for your time.
All right. I'm audible, right?
Yeah.
Am I audible? Yeah.
So as always, if you're ready, just on the count of 3.
Okay. I would start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Now let's look at the difference between side government and side opposition, and let's see the problem that exists under side government. And there's one word I can use to just summarize the whole problem that exists within side government, which is side government is actually alienating their audience, and that's a big problem. As we said before. Now, what we have said here. Understand that when side government wanted to break down these social media companies to different administration and create more, a more diverse competition, which each one of them is very different, and how they say is curated towards the needs of the people, right? We say this is a big problem because then when we break it down, we are not just creating more services that consumers have to pay, which hurts them financially. It also going to be a problem where all of the social medias are being broken down, are curated towards those one specific group of people, in which it creates an even worse echo chamber under side opposition. Because then when there's so many different social media with so many different ideologies, therefore then each people with the same ideology will always go to one social media, therefore creating an even worse echo chamber. Because that is exists under our world when we have a big monopoly where where all of those social medias are being curated on one place. Therefore, we're able to have more discussion of different topics within that same social media itself, because all the users are from people with very different background, not just a specific curated background within one social media. Therefore, we are the only one who are actually upholding the principle of social media in the first place of if it's being social, where people from different backgrounds are able to come together. But under their world, people of the same background are in the same app. Now there's a problem. And another thing is that how under our we also tell you how it's okay for have monopolization, because then there's going to be better regulation of content, of form scams, and also how there's going to be control on the data setting. Because understand that when you break down the company, those companies are going to lose their values and making the data that they have be less valuable, meaning that it's even cheaper and more readily available. And then you are able to get a lot more data for more specifically curated specific data from smaller companies, or if YouTube were to break down, they would have a lot of information from just YouTube itself. But if you have a monopolization of it, we are making the data very scarce, meaning that those data are very expensive. Even if it were to be sold, it is still very okay, because it's going to be sold to just one person and it's going to be very expensive. But if you to break down a lot of the social medias, it's going to be even so cheaper. It's going to be very readily available and very cheap for all these like government bodies to just like lobbying to every single one of the social medias, especially if it's curated towards those certain echo chamber in the first place, therefore creating all those problems. But under our world, by having this centralized data, we're able to have a lot of also innovations where there's going to be shared of knowledge more smoothly in between those corporations if they were not to be broken down. Because if they were to be broken down, it's very hard for you to have innovations in the first place. And we believe that under our world, there's still a lot of options of social media, because understand that even there are monopolization, it is a monopolization by multiple different major big companies, giants of tech, meaning that there's a lot of options. Even if one company, if you say like, these companies are very like how hostile towards you, but there's still a lot of other options for you to go on, not just one option. Therefore, I believe that under the current situation, under the current status quo of social media and the current status quo, it's okay for any of these monopolization to exist. And I believe that it's even more problematic if you to break down social media. You're just exacerbating all the harms that are currently existing within social media and making it even worse when you were to break it down. It's even better if you to keep it in one centralized system where it's more where it's monopolized, where it is monopolized, because we believe that it's not just good for the company, it's also very much beneficial towards the consumer in the end of the day, not just in terms of safety, but also in terms of in terms of convenience, and also generally it's just better for everyone. So I think I don't have anything else to say. I believe that's like opposition takes today's case. With that, thank you.
Right, so thank you, opposition reply, for that speech. To close out the debate, I would like to invite the government reply to deliver the speech. So as always, just let me know when you're ready on the count of three.
Okay, I'm ready. 3, 2, 1. Buzzwords like moderation and regulation don't go far in breaking down the clear faults of mega companies. Regulation is either bad for business, such as televising the India and Kashmir war, or good for business, such as censoring right-wing content. What I'm proving here is that regulations are a noble aspiration, but for these companies, it's merely an afterthought. Couple of things that we've said that we conclusively won before moving on to one bigger picture claim. The things that we won conclusively is on the principle of freedom of speech. We argued that we generally get more control. Opposition says, well, that's not that different from the status quo. Yes, but that was never our burden. All we had to prove is just that there's comparatively slightly more control when they are broken down, which means that perhaps it's true that they're bad, but they don't have the ability to exercise their perverse incentives on our side of the house. The way in here is that if there are people who use social media for freedom of speech, which is a large chunk of consumers, Gov is a team that helps them achieve this freedom more. The second thing that we conclusively win is on how companies are get far less control over the human resources on our side of the house, because employees in status quo have no choice at all as to who to work for. Every designer wants to work for Google. Every content creator wants to go on TikTok. We give them more opportunities elsewhere, so they have to choose which social media platform is better for their human resource. These things mean that absent of any response, there are pragmatic implications to our case, and therefore we win conclusively. The third thing is on apps, which is the only thing that UP really had a contention on. Just a preface here, the apps are very personal preference. So some people care about super apps, but some don't. So this is not really contentious. But let's look at how opposition approached this clash. They argued that super apps are convenient because then you can imply regulations there. We can improve these apps too on our side of the house, but we do it better because we do it via competition. Because each company will now need to look over their shoulders and see how other companies are performing with their platforms. But secondly, moderation can happen on our side of the house more because there is more incentive to care on the retainment of our own people. What we're proving here is if apps were ever a contention in this debate, we get better quality apps. But we're arguing that this was never a contention in the debate because what's more important are the people behind these apps in the first place. Now, let's just conclude the entire debate. Opposition's case has yet to evolve past the leader of opposition, because living in a monopoly may be great for consumers at opposition's best, but it is devastating for the back end. You are expendable to Mark Zuckerberg. You are merely a tool for Alphabet. It is unfair for these companies to put us in this form of precariousness because we don't know, as a technologist or as a technical expert in Facebook, we don't know if next week we're going to be laid off or not, just because there are no other better options as an employer. So consumers may be feeling great about themselves in the absolute best case. However, we give lots of reasons as to how consumers are going to be comparatively worse given in our whip and second speaker's speech, because just generally these companies are incredibly perverse in nature. But even if we take opposition at their best, these companies are going to be good for these consumers, but that comes at a cost of privacy concerns. That comes at a cost of tampering with democracies, tampering with elections. And worse, it means that you centralize authority and control to only one individual company. If you break it apart, we have different entities, different companies that have to compete for the same share. In return for all of our data that these companies have taken from us, we deserve half of their wallet, and that's something that's completely justified. We take this debate. Thanks.
Right, so thank you, government reply, for that speech. That marks the end of the debate. The judges now will make the decision on the side who wins the debate. So before we end, I would like to thank everyone on the round. For now, you just wait for 10 minutes before the judge, to wait for the judge deliberation, and for the judge will to announce the result.